I'm Hannah.
And I'm David.
Welcome to PVM Perspective, a podcast about getting the most out of RuneScape PVM. Today, before we get started, I just kind of want to give you all a little bit update. The show has been on another little bit of a break here. David had lost his headset for a little while there, but we should be back on a regular 2-week schedule now, especially once we get into the fall here. Our lives will be a little bit more scheduled and a little bit less hectic, so hopefully we will be bringing you more regular episodes. Thank you all for your patience in our little breaks over the summer here as they have come. I know you all have been asking me where we are, and we are here now. Today we are finally going to wrap up the solo bosses. Well, arguably wrap up the solo bosses in RuneScape. There are some more that you could argue are solo, but you know, we'll talk about that as it comes to it. So this is going to be part 3 of our Guide to Modern Bossing series. Before I forget, before we get into the show, I do want to say that you can find me streaming when I stream on Twitch at queenofblaze. You can help fund PVM Perspective and support the RuneScape Weekly Podcasting Network at tip.runeweek.com. Thank you for everyone who does support, and let's hop right into the show. We've kind of decided the way to do it here is we have 3 bosses left to cover, the Magister, Telos, and Araxxi, and we are going to start with the Magister first. Has a high level Slayer requirement, but is much easier than the rest of them, probably because it's locked behind the Slayer requirement. Anyways, I have not gotten a chance to do this fight yet because I'm only at 102 Slayer, question mark. I don't even remember where I am, but I know you have, David, so I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, so I was able to do this boss within a few minutes of release. I was on a bunch of my friends on my leech service and hard mode team, and we were all kind of expecting something challenging. A few people went in with full acto and a yak and super brews and soups, and I don't know, it's just really over geared. It turned out the fight was super easy. None of us really knew what any of the mechanics were. After we finished killing it, a lot of us thought that there would be a phase 2 or something, because most of us finished it around a minute and 20 seconds or so for the first attempt, and on stream they had said that it would be 3 minutes after people had gotten used to it, and so I don't know what they mean anymore when they say targeted kill times for people, but whatever, it was fine. It was fun enough. I had some fun with I think it was Zenel on Discord. I was talking about it, and Zenel kept telling me to do different things, and eventually I did a kill with no armor and just a Gothic staff. It took me like 12 minutes, and it was brutal. But anyways, that kind of gives you an idea. This is not a particularly intimidating boss as long as your DPS level is pretty high. And it's pretty straightforward. It's straight up just do as much damage as you possibly can. That's why for the recommended method is 4-tick auto attacking with magic. I've explained at length on previous shows what exactly that is. There are lots and lots of videos up on YouTube now, and a big Twitter discussion over whether it should be a thing, whether it should be removed from the game, or whether it should in fact be added to the other 2 styles. But if you're wondering why the Staff of Sliske and the dual wield magic weapons are so much more valuable than their ranged and melee tier 92 counterparts, you can look no further than 4-tick auto attacking. It's a massive DPS increase. I'm not going to give a number on it because there's disagreement, but it's pretty huge. And the other recommended style, which surprised me, is ranged, is pretty good here. The Magister attacks mostly with magic, so that little extra defense doesn't hurt. And range seems like a pretty good style. If you're just looking for the pet and you do a lot of other combat in your time, you might want to use your ranged auras at Magister and save your magic and melee auras for bosses like Telos or Araxxi or some of the group bosses. I think this is a pretty good place to use your ranged auras as far as that goes. There are kind of a few different mechanics. There's one with a pillar that drains your health points. It doesn't drain your HP, but it makes your stats lower. You can counter this pretty easily with the Super Restore. It's basically a non-mechanic because Super Restores exist, but either way, you could just pretty much ignore it because if you're DPSing the boss with a good rotation, like we've talked about on previous shows, you'll have no problem killing it well before this is a threat. The only two mechanics that there are kind of three other mechanics. One is shadows will come out. As far as I could tell, and I haven't done this boss a lot, maybe just a couple hundred kills, it seems to be time based. And if you're able to get the boss down to what is it, a dividend of 50k? I don't know. I don't know math terms, Hannah. Maybe you could help me out here. Like something that's divisible by 50,000. I don't know what you call that.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine because I don't know math terms either.
You know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
it starts at 200k. If you get to 150k before a certain amount of time, it seems like the shadows just don't spawn.
Okay.
So the shadows can be melee, ranged, or magic. There are two of them, and they hit quite hard. So basically, if there's a lot of HP left, I would definitely recommend killing these. They really hurt surprisingly a lot. So they're kind of like the shadows in Greg, but have a lot more HP and hit a lot harder.
Okay.
But if you're almost done with the fight, then I'd recommend just ignoring them. If you're using magic or ranged and it spawns two melee shadows, you could just stun the melee shadow and run from it, which I found amusing. But I don't know. It's probably easier to just kill it so you can stay in your sunshine or death swiftness or what have you.
Sure.
But yeah. So that's one option. The second mechanic is that the second important mechanic. There are various ones where he'll yell things that they're so inconsequential, not even really worth mentioning. The second big one is he'll yell something. It's been a couple weeks, so I forget exactly what he yells, but it becomes very apparent he's going to do it, and he barges into you. So it goes from, it's a very hard hitting melee attack, and is actually, the few times I died, it was a direct result of this barge. You can hit maybe 6k or something like that. It's pretty brutal, and especially because most of the time you'll either be praying Soul Split or protecting Mage. So basically you want to flick pray melee for that and you'll be fine. And then the third one is he'll throw something like a bomb. I play on low graphics, so at least at the time that I was doing this fight, I couldn't actually see it, but there was a timer above it. It's just a bar that fills up, and as soon as the bar fills up, it explodes it's always 4,000 damage, and it hits everything, including the shadow clones and the boss itself. If you manage to get him to that area, that's not really worth doing. It's better to just move out of the way, and if it hits the Magister, it hits the Magister. That's great.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, a couple of issues. One is on release, stuns worked very well to almost stun lock the Magister if you just spammed him with stuns. They now gave him the ability to freedom those stuns. So RIP Rack. For the first few hours of the fight, you could just hit like 5-6 Ks with Rack constantly. Really a joy to see. And then the other thing is he has very, very low affinity. So your accuracy, even with tier 92s, Annihil and 10% aura. Accuracy from aura, I was still splashing maybe a third of my attacks, which is another reason why 4-ticking shines so much here, is because 4-ticking allows you to sneak in so many more of those auto attacks that the accuracy hurts you a little bit less because you're just attacking so much more in a short amount of time. But really, it's just something you just have to chew through. It's the new normal for RS, quote unquote, high level bosses, is instead of giving it interesting and nuanced and fun mechanics like Araxxi, I would argue, is probably maybe arguably the best at that of any solo boss. I think Hannah might agree with that.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, and so instead of that, it just have extremely low accuracy, and so the fight can take artificially longer. I've actually never done this fight with tier 90s. That one time with the Gothic staff was kind of a meme. It was awful. Don't do it. But I've never done it with tier 90s because I've had a full tier 92 set for kind of a long time now. And so I've only used tier 92s here. The melee also, I had a friend who really liked melee. I got KO'd a couple times with it, and so I didn't really practice a rotation. I'm sure with the ZGS spec and Zerk, you could get pretty fast, consistent kills. it's just for me the potential for him to KO you and how much damage he does is just kind of annoying to me. And also, if I'm going to use something that's not magic, I'd rather just be using my ranged auras because I use range so infrequent.
Yeah, I think this was a fight that I think disappointed a lot of people on release. I mean, personally, I don't think it's a problem that it was an easy fight. I think I was okay with that, but just the fact that it was so splash heavy. Plus, as I actually predicted on the main show, the copy paste mechanic from the Ascension dungeon kind of failed here. I mean, I think it ended up being I mean, it's profitable for some people, but it's still a mechanic that is extremely frustrating and very easy to lose money on because you have to collect a bunch of different shards and you have to use a key every time you go into the boss fight that you get from the monsters. I'm not really sure why JX decided to use that as a mechanic again in a boss fight, considering how much of a failure I would say the Ascension dungeon is. Like, I think people still kill them, but people don't kill them to make money, and it's not going to take long where the Magister is that way. There's a lot of people who argue the Magister is currently there. It's hard. It's really kind of hard to tell if the Magister is already at a place where it's not making money. But the fact that it's dual wield T92 melee weapons means that I don't expect the weapons to hold their value like the magic or range weapons of the same tier will. So I wish Jagex had gone about this fight in a different way. It was, to me, a bit of a mistake to remake the Ascension dungeon. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the fact it was tier 92 dual wield melee compounds that problem. Dual wield melee is infrequently used because it just has a lot of limitations. It's a minute DPS boost over Drygor. So situations and at least high level PVM where you'd use this would be phase 4 of Araxxi, base 1 at Angel of Death, and perhaps if you're doing the melee roll at Virago and are tryharding with a lot of switches. But aside from those niche uses, and I guess God War's Dungeon too, but really at places like that, you'll notice very little difference between Drygors and the tier 92 because you're using, like I say, a ZGS anyways, which has that really awesome spec that just makes it clearly a really helpful and useful weapon. But the other thing is that it's just fragments on fragments. So you get these phylactery, which are it's RNG based because you could get 2, 5, 15, or 25, 2, 5, 10, 15, or 25 or something like that. So it's an RNG based drop to get the phylactery. Then it's RNG how many scraps you get. Then you have to make these blessings, and then you need 3 of the blessings before you can finally make something that's tradable.
Yeah,
and the problem is that even if it is, say, 8 mil an hour, I've seen a lot of people estimate around 8 to 10 mil an hour. I think that's a little high, and I don't think that accounts for supply usage at all, which is pretty significant. Because most people factor in the cost of keys, but not the cost of charges and potions and runes or whatever it is. It's like obviously there's a lot more than just keys going in the cost. So let's say it's 6 to 8 mil an hour for an average person. Then that's assuming you get average luck. Obviously, you could go really dry and make nothing. It just requires for at least, I would say, the majority of the player base, although I don't know if it's the majority of the player base with 115 Slayer. I don't know what the cross-section of people with the Slayer level to do the boss and how much money they have in their bank. But for most people, I would imagine it's a pretty significant amount of money to tie up resources in. The keys are 600k each still.
Something like that,
500-600k each. And you need... you could expect probably 600 to 700 kills in order to make a weapon, and the weapons are already falling. I bought them for 500. I bought them for 500 million, like that.
I think,
which might seem like a lot of money, but when you're spending that much on keys, it's really. I think the reception was a little more sour than it should have been, just because I think myself included, a lot of people got too hyped by it's being so One, there was this artificial, it was delayed 3 weeks. This must be epic and sick and amazing for them to like put all this extra work in, which is all nonsense, but it's like we believed it anyways.
Sure.
And two, they just hyped the shit out of this for months, you know, like they this was like the Menaphos boss. It was the high level thing. It was going to be awesome. It was going to be a tier 92. It was going to have amazing rewards, etc. And it's like,
Yeah, they
we all
acted
just
like there was special. The way they talked on stream, there was going to be a special drop mechanic and stuff like that, and the special drop mechanic turned out to be shitty. Like I don't know, like you don't get that. The reason that you drop stuff, right, like the reason you don't split stuff up this bad is like, you know, at Rax, the spider leg is split into 3 pieces, and you know the attachments to the spider leg are another 3 pieces that you can get at random. But the thing about that is, you know, it's not like this where you're splitting it up so much that you never get that feeling at the Magister of like you got the good drop, right? Like that's kind of a part of what keeps you motivated to boss, is like getting that good drop, and you're just never gonna have that feeling at Magister when you're just collecting scraps over 500 kills.
Yeah, the only good drops at Magister are RDT. That's it. High level RDT drops, things like Hazelnut or Signet Ring. That's the only high level drop you're gonna see at Magister. It's the only drop you're going to see worth more than about 100k. The only saving grace, and the reason I think that the Magister is way less profitable than it used to be, is that it dropped high quantities of Vital Sparks. I don't know, we maybe should talk a little bit about Vital Sparks, because I don't think we've talked about it quite yet on the show, and it kind of has changed the meta a little bit. But they recently changed the drop rate for Vital Sparks in the Slayer dungeon, and the cost of them seems to have dropped substantially. And so the one thing at Magister that was worth, like, you know, it was like 150, 200k drop, which again is like, you know, getting rune kite shields at God Wars Dungeon 2, or like Dragon Bones at
Still
so
not,
even
still
then
not a
it was
real
not
big drop. Yeah,
but at least it was something. I think that has crashed significantly. So I think the one decent drop on the common loot table is now no very good.
Yeah.
I think
if there's something you guys can learn from this, it's please give up on the Ascension dungeon model. It's not working, and also don't make the rare drops work like this. It doesn't feel good to have the rare drops work like this. The rare drops should be. I mean, I understand. Like I said, I understand Araxxi splitting them up a little bit, making them a couple pieces, but don't make it thousands of pieces you have to collect, or hundreds of pieces you have to collect. That's just too far.
And I totally agree. The other weird thing was this boss was, now I'm on the conspiracy theory camp on this one, but you know, maybe I'm wrong, totally off base here. But the Slayer XP at this boss was just like wild. It was just like batshit what it came. It was like 3.5 mil XP an hour, and a lot of people I was talking to are convinced that the reason it was so high was not because of a mistake, which they claimed it was just like a bug, and they fixed it like 3 hours after. So I actually got like 4 mil Slayer XP on release of this boss, because I was just like, I don't know, I was just killing the boss. It wasn't my fault that I was getting XP drops that were big. A lot of people think that they just so overestimated how long it would take people to get the kill, kind of like Calfight King, because when Calfight King came out, it was way more Slayer XP than it ended up being, because people started figuring out how to kill it super fast for really fast Slayer XP. And so I'm on the side of things that it wasn't actually a bug, that they just like grossly underestimated or overestimated, I'm not sure what the right word is there, how fast people would kill it. Because with 3 minutes, 4 minute kill times, the Slayer XP would have made sense. It would have been, you know, it would have been high, like maybe 900k an hour or something like that. But that's like in line with top level Slayer. Now it's like that's what you get at Ripper Demons, for example. But not, you know, 3 mil an hour. So that's what I think.
I can understand the thinking that way, but I could be misremembering. But I swear that there were some JMods that were saying the fight was going to be under 2 minutes. I mean, I made my mind. It is misremembering there, and I don't know. It's been, you know, it's easy for our minds to rewrite history. So I'm not sure if I'm correct there.
I just remember what they said on stream before release, and it was like they expected to be around 3 minutes once people.
See, I don't remember.
Out, so.
I don't remember them saying 3 minutes. I remember them saying under 2, but I don't know. Yeah. It's hard to, like I said, it's hard to guarantee the facts of the past. Either way, yeah. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, it sounds like. I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff with this fight, like having to fix stuns and stuff like that. Like I'm not sure why stuns weren't thought of when they were testing it. You know, especially they took an extra 3 weeks. Like, how did you not realize that stun locking this boss was going to be ridiculous before launch? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it wasn't like terribly overpowered. Like it's kind of cool. It's kind of sad that, one of the coolest mechanics in the game is that after you stun a boss and use dread nips, when a boss is stunned, abilities like rack, piercing shot, and slice and punish do way more damage than normal. And so it encourages people to think out, then map out their ability rotations to include those abilities and to include those stun combos. And like their answer to it for almost every boss except Telos is just like, yeah, no, you don't get to stun. So I wish there was some. I wish there was a better way of dealing with that.
There is an issue, I think, with EOC in general, where their solution to stuff is, nope, we're just gonna make that impossible. It's the same thing, kind of like at AOD, where they made defensive abilities useless, and it's like, why like, you're removing a part of the game there, and that just doesn't feel good to people. Like, come up with a smarter way to design the boss rather than removing a part of combat.
Yeah, and obviously the goal at AOD was to force people to use multiple tanks per team, so you didn't have just one solo tank. But maybe do something where it's like after a player has been targeted for a certain amount of time, they just start getting, they just start taking huge amounts of typos, which is kind of what they did. But I don't know what you do exactly.
I mean, or if that's your issue, then like maybe you need to redesign defensive abilities. I don't know, like. It's just like your thing shouldn't be, oh, these things are OP, let's just cut them out of this fight. There should be a different solution to that. I mean, I can totally understand them having an issue with where defensives are right now because they are a bit ridiculous, but I don't think that the solution should be to ban them from one fight. The solution should be to rein them in some way. Or give them a bigger disadvantage. I don't know, like make shields. I don't know, delay shield switching in some way. I have no idea, but I don't know. I would like to see some changes to defensive abilities themselves rather than just not allowing them because I don't know. I kind of worry that that'll become the pattern in the future where just every group boss from now on will just be like, nope, fuck your offensives. We're just gonna make it so you can't use them.
Yeah, and I think enrage stacks at raids is probably the closest they've come to a happy medium there, where if you properly manage your enrage stacks, you could use defensives with ease. If you don't properly manage your enrage stacks, then they'll be put on cooldown pretty often. So something like that would have been a little more clever, I think.
So speaking of the money making of Magister, this is a little bit off topic, but I don't know if you saw on Reddit. Did you see the 6 mil an hour spiritual mage method that people have come up with?
Oh, within the player-owned dungeon, something like that.
Yeah, you fill your player-owned dungeon with spiritual mages, and it lets you make 6 mil an hour from them. It's freaking ridiculous. Yeah. So you're basically making like you're basically making Araxxi level money because you can wear T70s non-degradable stuff. And just the only thing you really need is aggro pots. So you need aggro pots. You don't even need overloads. Aggro pots and prayer pots, and you can just camp there 6 mil an hour, which is an astounding amount of money. It's actually like, it's weird to me because like when the player-owned dungeon first came out, I was a bit frustrated because I thought like this is going to be useless. There's only 5 spawns, but it's kind of cool to see these niche things that the community is coming up with, which I think is what Jagex wanted to have happen, is like you can make these little niche Slayer dungeons like that 6 mil an hour thing where you can make a lot of money, which I think is good. As long as they don't end up nerfing stuff like that, I think the player-owned Slayer dungeon will actually be useful to people.
Yeah, and I think the tormented demon method is pretty cool too, where you do like 2 different spots where you have a tormented demon in each one, because they're kind of hard to deal with when they're grouped up.
Yeah.
And then you fill the other 4 with like hill giants or something. So you just like your last attack, you just do an AoE and refill your prayer with the necklace or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of methods like that. There's and people making Ripper demons easy, like putting 1 Ripper demon in a room and then allowing you to use your demon horn necklace against Rippers, which can save you some money, stuff like that. It's very, very cool stuff.
Yeah.
The next boss we have to talk about here is Araxxi. By far my favorite solo boss in the game.
Yeah.
I just got over 500 kills. Still no pet drop. Screw you, Jake, for getting your pet already.
Well, base pet's pretty. Base pet is the second hardest boss pet to get, I think. So
Yeah,
yeah, could take a while. Third hardest now. Yeah, third hardest now. But yeah,
yeah.
you'll get it eventually.
I will. I mean, I really like the boss, so I don't see myself leaving unless they release a T92 Scythe and crash the profitability. I'll be there for a while. That's my only worry. Is as soon as they do that, Rax is probably not going to be worth doing anymore.
Yeah, it could be a long time before they do that, though.
I hope so. I really, really hope so. But so, yeah, as far as this boss goes, tactics and strategies, you can really use any combat style. There's actually advantages and disadvantages to that. I think, the most recommended combat style, if you're comfortable with it, is melee.
By far, yeah.
It will make the fight harder because you have to make sure you stay out of melee range of Rax and stay is it an odd number of squares away or an even number? I always forget which one it is.
Even number of squares.
Okay,
yeah,
so you have to be an even number of squares away or else Rax will melee hit you, and that's a lot of damage to be taken.
And one trick is that if you go away from the boss, turn walk on, and then auto attack or just use an ability, it'll automatically put number of squares away.
It's honestly something I wish they would update in the game. I wish they would make it just, I don't know, like micromanaging that kind of movement just doesn't feel good in RS. I wish they would make it so that run would just put you an even number of squares away. It's an argument that I would make.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. But as is, it's that's how to do it easily is with.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, mage and range also work. I would personally say that range is going to be your easiest way to learn unless you're already super competent at PVM. Range allows you to ignore a lot of mechanics. Like when you're meleeing, you have to get out of the way of cleaves every time Max cleaves. If you range the boss, you can just stand where you are as long as you're freedomed or anticipation, so it allows you to avoid a lot of those things. I guess we should break that down. So the way this boss works is there are 3 paths and there are 4 phases. So phase 1.
And there are also three different colors of legs based on your style. So there's that too.
That is true. So if you go in there mage, you are did they make it 100% chance now that you're going to get the right spawn? I forget.
Well, so if you make an instance, it's 100% chance.
Oh. You still there? You dropped out. I think we have lost connection with David here. Give us a second to reestablish this. All right, we are back. Sorry for the little drop off there, but hopefully things will hold up now. So what were you saying?
So I was saying that right now in an instance, if you make your instance, it's 100% chance that it'll spawn to the style that it is weak to. Based on your main hand weapon, which is important. It's all based on your main hand weapon. So if you will go in with, say, like a wand and a offhand Drygore, it'll spawn with melee, or with melee, which is the weakness to magic, obviously. And so if you use a pheromone in non-instance, there's like a tiny chance. It's like a 1% chance. This could have been fixed a while back. I don't think it has been, but there's like a 1% chance it'll be random. But 99% of the time, it'll spawn with a style weak to you. And then if you go into a regular fight, no instance, no pheromone, it's totally random which style you'll get.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so yeah, each style, and mainly what that affects, I think that, well, of course it affects the weakness, but the main thing that you get there is you have a better chance of getting a certain type of hilt. So if you're fighting mage, you have the best chance of getting a fang. If you're fighting with range, you have the best chance of getting an eye. And if you're fighting with melee, you have the best chance of getting a web. I think I got that right.
Yeah. So green legs is web, which is the weakness to melee. Red legs is fang, which is the weakness to mage. And then bluish legs is eye, which is the weakness to ranged. It's the breakdown seems to be that if you roll on the table to get a quote unquote hilt, you have a 2/3 chance of getting that one that you're more likely to get, and then the other third is split up 50-50 between the other two. So Harley getting all of these fangs while fighting with melee is both lucky in the sense that, or sorry, Hana, excuse me, that Hana has to roll on the table. 2, Hana has to get super lucky not to get the web, and then has to get even luckier to not get an eye. So
it's weird because I have been doing melee kills for like the past 300 kills, and I only have 2 webs. I have 5 eyes and 2 webs. And
yeah, that is so
fangs.
wild to me.
Yeah, so I'm basically...
That is so many hilts. You've gotten more hilts than me in a third of the KC.
And I'm also defying RNG, where I'm basically almost never getting webs for some weird reason. So,
yeah,
Jagex, please don't look into this, because if it's a bug on my account, it should stay forever. Thank you. So yeah, like I said, the way it works, there are 3 paths and 4 phases. Each path has its own special mechanic. Phase 1 is always the same, though. You enter the boss fight, you light the web of the path you want to fight. Oh, I also should say that depending there's a 4-day rotation for paths. So there's only 2 paths open at a time, and that changes every 4 days.
Yep.
So phase 1, you go down there, light the web you want. Rax comes down from the ceiling. Is it every 4 auto attacks you have to freedom?
So 4 auto attacks and then
yeah, so every 4 auto attacks you want to either cast freedom or anticipate, so you want to have those keybound, get used to doing that. I still do not count auto attacks. I know a lot of people like to do that. I just kind of wing it, and I get it right most of the time. It works out. But so there are 3 different specials that Rax can do in phase 1, phase 1. He can either cast a web over himself and heal himself, and while doing this, any damage that you do to him will be reflected back upon yourself. So you need to stop attacking ASAP.
But it does cancel Araxxor's healing. So if you don't care about damage to you could put a bleed on, like a low-level bleed, like Dismember or something, and that'll prevent Araxxor from healing himself.
Yeah. So.
If you want to do that. Or you could heal yourself on it, which is something that a lot of people do. With melee, you want to use the ability Quake. There's a delay. There's a slight tick delay where if you use Quake and then put on a shield and resonance, you'll resonance your hit. With range, you use Snipe. And then with magic, you just want to use Detonate, because Detonate is OP for reflect mechanics.
This is one of the most frustrating abilities to deal with when using Revolution, because it's very hard to make especially if you are ranging or using magic, it is very hard to make yourself stop attacking something. Sometimes it's very random as to whether or not walking away from a boss will make you actually stop attacking. So what I started doing when I was ranging was actually I just brought a melee weapon switch just so I could stop my damage as soon as Rax webbed. So that if you're having issues there, that can be something you can do. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that. It will be a little bit frustrating when ranging if you're using Revolution. Full manual will, of course, get rid of that problem, but that depends if you want to put in that type of effort, which is something I have yet to do, so I understand people who don't want to.
Yep.
The next mechanic is Cleave. With Cleave, if you are not within melee distance, Rax pulls you within melee distance and then swings his legs at you and hits you for a crap ton of damage, especially at high end rages. It is a 1-hit KO pretty dang quickly. So you want to avoid that damage. At lower ranges, you can be hit by it. Still hurts a lot. I think it's like initial damage is like 4K maybe or 2K. I don't remember.
It's around 4K. In duos at 300%, you could hit over 15K though.
Yeah,
so
yeah. But I'm saying at 0% in rage. I forget.
But at 0%, yeah, it's around K. Probably.
Yeah, so
which can still. I don't know. That could still hurt.
Yeah, it can still hurt, but you can. At least it won't kill you, so you can get away. You can eat. While learning, it's okay if you mess up and have this mechanic hit you at low. But if you are freedom anticipated, then this attack you will not be pulled within melee distance, and you will. If you're ranging, you will just stand where you are, and you'll just see him cleave, and you'll be fine. If you are meleeing, you'll have to run away when he starts cleaving. And then the third one is Cocoon, where Rax casts a cocoon on you, and it does slow damage over time. You have to just spam click on your screen somewhere to break the webbing, and if you have Freedom Anticipate, it only takes 2 clicks, whereas if you are not Freedom or Anticipate, it takes like 8-10 clicks or something like that, so it's a lot more damage if you are not using it Freedom or Anticipate. those are the 3 mechanics for path 1 or for phase 1. Do you have anything you wanted to add there?
The only thing I wanted to add is that Araxxi gains special mechanics based on the style he's using. So if he's using melee, he can inflict a bleed, which deals pretty significant damage, especially at higher ranges. This is part of why magic is arguably the most difficult style for Araxxi. The reason people do it is pretty obvious. It gets you a better chance of that fang, which is worth, by far the most of any drop. But if you have Hana's luck, that doesn't matter anyways. I did about 300 kills with magic just to see how I do, and I didn't get a single hilt. Period.
Yeah, if you have my luck,
who knows?
Killing with mage would actually have gotten me less fangs if the same RNG was true. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to think about.
And then the other mechanics are draining. One drains your stats. It gets immediately refreshed with overload. And then I forget what the third one is. Poison. Right. So ranged poisons, magic. When Araxxi is magic style, Araxxi specials, it'll drain your stats occasionally, which is why ranged is one of the easiest styles to learn. It's a non-issue. Melee, it'll bleed you, and then with magic or with ranged it'll poison, right? That makes sense.
And so the poison one, of course, you just bring a super anti-poison plus is what I bring, because it gives you 10 minutes. It usually lasts the whole fight once you get your kills below 6 minutes, which will take you some time. If you're not good at PVM, that's totally fine. My kills were 10 to 12 minutes for a very long time. I've only recently gotten to the point where most of my kills are on this. Anyways, so those are worth considering. I totally forgot to bring them up, so thank you. The next thing we're going to talk about, I guess we'll go through the paths in order. So path 1 is the first path. This is, I was going to say the most hated path, but the most hated path at Rax is kind of hard to decide because I think it depends on how good you are, and it also depends on what annoys you the most. But path 1, I guess I'd say, is the most frustrating path at times. So path 1,
I would say it's the hardest to learn, but the best once you've mastered the boss.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. And actually, this is honestly one of the things I think is very well designed about Rax is the way P1 works, and the fact that it is, you hate it when you start the fight, and then once you get really good at the fight, you actually can become your favorite path because you can skip these mechanics. But anyway, Rax gets 25 little spiders to spawn. 5 at a time come out. There are a few different types. I'm gonna state the 2 worst ones here. I can't remember, and you can add the other types if you want to, David. But the first one is the mirrorback spider. This is by far the worst. Any damage that you do to Rax will be reflected upon you. It really sucks when that happens, when you just zerked and you just hurricaned and then you're dead because a mirrorback popped up and you didn't notice it. I've done that quite often. Happens to the best of us.
Happened to me many.
So the mirrorbacks, basically when you see spiders start spawning, at least my strategy currently when I see spiders start spawning is just get off Rax, watch until all the spiders are down. If there's a mirrorback, kill it ASAP, then get back to the fight. You can basically ignore the rest of the spiders. And there is only one special. There's two special types of spiders, and there will only ever be one of them per 5. So there's not like there's ever going to be 2 mirrorbacks or a pulsing spider. And speaking of pulsing spiders, this is the other type of special spider. This is a spider that will heal Rax. It does heal Rax at a pretty considerable amount, so you want to find it as quickly as possible, but it's not like the mirrorback where you're going to die if you don't find it. So it's a little bit nicer to deal with than the mirrorback. And then are there 2 or 3? I think there's 2 or 3 other types of spiders, which are just
there's just 3. They just basic spiders. One deals melee attacks, one deals magic attacks, one deals attacks. That's all it is.
I have found that sometimes, depending on how good your rotations are going, especially if you're just starting to learn, you may want to kill those spiders as well. But as you get better at the fight, you can just ignore them for the most part.
I would say when learning, absolutely kill them, and once you're experienced, just save them for when you have something like Quake or Hurricane up, and you can get a little soul split heal off of killing them all at once.
Yeah. And it's a good thing to do to build up adrenaline. Because we should mention all these things are aggregate. except for there's a special thing that's not aggregate, but what that means is that all these mechanics stack on top of each other. So, the phase 1 mechanics are still in phase 2 on path 1. So you have to keep that in mind. So you're still getting potential Rax dropping the web to heal itself, things like that. So a lot of times when I'll kill the spiders is Rax drops the web to heal itself, so I'll go build adrenaline off the spiders while he's doing that, things like that. So that's also something that you can do. Basically your goal here, I think you can actually force the next phase right away if you really wanted to, which I think arguably, if you wanted to do that while learning, you could. Not really a good idea to force the next phase right away, though, is all I would say. But it can be something you can do. You don't actually have to stand in path 1 for that long if you didn't want to. But what you want to do... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt, Hannah. I would just say that the kind of advanced method for dealing with this, if you are very confident in your DPS ability, probably have, hundreds and hundreds of kills, probably it'll take you to really master this, is eventually you'll get so fast killing it during P1 that you'll have time left over. So just a TLDR for the kind of more advanced method of doing this is that right before the web is burning down on P1, you nat instinct, and then you natural instinct, which allows you to do a ton of damage, and then the first special of path 1 will always be eggs. So I don't think we mentioned that one yet. There's this like egg bomb, where there'll be eggs, which will spawn spiders, and then a bomb that will hit the eggs. And so basically what you do is you wait till Araxxi does a special in P1, and then you move to phase 2, and then you do as much damage as you possibly can before Araxxi does the egg special. Then after you see the egg bomb come, you do a few more attacks and then surge and then bladed dive and clear it to the next phase. What this does is that because it's always eggs first and minions second for that particular path, you're able to avoid the potential of getting that first minion spec. And then if you do enough damage on phase 3, there's a chance you'll get 1 or even 0 minion specials at all to come out. And that's kind of how people get kill times in 3 minutes and 10 seconds to 20 seconds, stuff like that. It's obviously more dangerous because that means that minions will spawn on phase 4, which can kill even very experienced people quite quickly. But if you want to get super fast kill times, that's kind of the method that's done. And it requires that you can do enough DPS to basically have that first initial phase all the way down to 5k health done with a pretty decent amount of time left to be able to start the next phase with 100% adrenaline, which I think a lot of people are not quite there.
The eggs are definitely worth talking about. It's a little glowy orange orb that shows up in your screen, slowly moving. You just have to get to around the eggs, and if you don't around the eggs, you take a 3k damage hit. If you are staying on top of the eggs, you take way less damage. Usually there's either 2 or 3 eggs. If there's 2, I think it's 1200 damage. If it's 3, I think it's 300 damage that you take, so it's very little then. Something you can do as well, if you can't get to the eggs because they're in a weird place, you can actually kill minion spawns with the eggs, which will also cut your damage down. So that is a good tip to know if you are trying to learn the boss and you just can't get over to the eggs because they're in a weird location. You can do stuff like that. But yeah, so like I said, when you're learning, this is going to be a very frustrating phase. You're going to have to be watching for mirror back, stuff like that, as David just laid out the higher intensity strat there. That's kind of how it ends up happening in the end, is you get much better at dealing with it. And then the next part is we have phase 3. Phase 3, any of the health that you did not take off of the previous Rax spawns. I guess we should say that each phase Rax has, is it 200k health or is it 100?
It's 100k.
Okay, so
health.
Each phase Rax has 100k health. Your any health that's left over will be put onto Rax in phase 3 by Araxxi, who was saying above. Is it Araxxi? Araxxi is the female version, right? I hope.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's Araxxi is the female version who is staying above the fight. So in phase 3, you have all the previous mechanics, plus you have the mechanics from whatever other path is open. So at this point, I'm going to go back and kind of talk about the other paths. So we're going to be talking about phase 2 for path 2 first. This is the pool phase, I think is what it's called. People might call it something else. But basically, in this phase, there is a pool of green liquid that you have to make rack standard.
It's acid.
Acid.
Yeah,
right.
That's the theme. Yeah.
You're right. Acid. You're right. The acid phase. That's the word I was actually looking for. So a pool of green acid. You want to make rack stand in. I think it's 40% that you need her to pick up in solo. 80% in duo. Is it 80% in duo? I forget what it is.
Yeah, it's twice as much in duo, which is why nobody duos this path, because it takes longer for two good people duo this path than it does to.
Yeah. So and I guess we should say basically duo makes everything twice as hard. So you do not want to learn this fight duoing. Although I think it is a way to see the fight initially. Like the first time I did Rax was with David. It was duo. It was terrible. I died a lot, but it also showed me the basic mechanics and made me feel more comfortable to do it on my own. So that is something that is valuable if you are like a visual learner or you learn by doing something. But don't expect to get any successful kills if that's how you're going to learn. Unless you're really good at PVM, you're probably not going to get a successful kill because you're just going to die over and over again. And you're going to want a patient friend to be with you who doesn't mind, losing some money over an hour or two showing you the basics of the fight. And but anyway, so you have her stand in the acid pool. All the other things are happening. You get the eggs the eggs come in phase 2 of every path. I should say that. So every path, phase 2, the eggs get added. And the other thing that happens in this path is Rax will summon an explosive spider, I guess is what to call it.
That's what. Yeah, I'd say explosive spider. Yeah.
Basically, he will shoot this little green pool out from him. It's kind of hard to notice. It looks like a ranged attack basically, until it hits the ground. So you have to learn how to look for this and keep your eye out for it. Personally, I think having the game on lowest detail actually makes it easier to see this. So if you're having trouble seeing this and you just want to learn the fight, you might want to turn the graphics all the way down in RS. I know it looks kind of crappy, but just learn the fight this way. Turn graphics all the way down. It may make it easier to see this spider. But basically, if that spider touches you, or if you run through that spider, you die. No way to avoid it. You die. Can't reflect it. Can't do anything. You're just dead. That's how it works.
Cool.
All right, sorry about that, everybody. There's another interruption, so if our talk seems a little bit confusing, I had to run AFK for a minute there. But anyway, we were talking about the
explosive spider.
The explosive spider, yes. So there are 2 versions of the explosive spider: a slow-walking one, which is the one you want, and a super fast one, which is terrifying, and you do not want.
Very terrifying. Yeah, surge away from that thing.
Yeah. But basically, as soon as you see this cast, you want to get pretty far away from it. Kind of to, I can't think of a good distance, but like halfway across the room or something like that, I guess is the best way to describe it. The hardest time to deal with this mechanic is once you have Rax at 40%. Look, actually, you want to get him to about 50% liquid. So because you have to basically, there's a little ramp that you have to walk Rax up and get him near the end of it, and then that acid that you have sucked up will seep into the ground and break down a wall that is blocking you from jumping to phase 3. So what you want to do is get up there and get that acid drop down. You have to have Rax kind of near the top, or else it won't be going in. This is where the explosive spiders become particularly dangerous, because Rax loves to hide them up there, essentially. At least it feels like he's hiding them, and or put them right beside you as soon as you get to the top. How many times does that happen where you just get to the top of this phase 2 of path 2, and then bam, there's an explosive spider spawn right beside you. But yeah, I guess I should say too, the way it works is he casts that little thing out, it creates a little greenish pool, and then like 3 to 5 seconds later the spider pops out, so you have a little bit of time to react. But yeah, as soon as you see it, you want to surge away, get to halfway across the map, and if you see one running at you, it feels like it's too close, you can probably walk away from it. You cannot surge through these. If you surge through it, it will kill you. So don't wait to surge until it's already spawned. Make sure you're already out of the way.
And bladed dive can be quite nice here too, because it's a little more.
Yeah, a little easier to control and such. Yeah. Anything else that you want to add to Path 2 Phase 2?
No, I'll just say that if you want to maximize kill speed, especially on 2-3, but even on 1-2, if you're doing Path 2 for some reason, I wouldn't recommend this. I think when Path 1 is open, you pretty much always want to do that. And we can get into reasons for that when we talk about Phase 3 more specifically. But the kind of way to maximize DPS here is that just as the bridge is breaking, and you'll learn how to time this pretty much perfectly, you want to use Natural Instinct. And then you have time to use both Anticipate and Freedom. It won't, F you for the next mechanic. I promise it'll be fine. You could use both Freedom, Anticipate, and an auto attack during the kind of cutscene or animation, which gets you a nice healthy amount of adrenaline. Then you want to build to Zerk as fast as possible, and don't use your adrenaline pot. Obviously, you're going to need that for Phase 4. But Zerk, and then do a full Zerk rotation. Obviously, if you're using ranged or magic, you do the same thing, but with Death Swiftness.
Yeah, let's save that till we cover Path 3, Phase 2, though. We'll talk about Phase 3 after that a little bit more in depth.
That's fair.
So yeah, the next thing we have, we're gonna skip once again. You're not going to be doing these, like I said, you're not going to be doing these in one fight. These are all Phase 2 different paths. So we're going to Phase 2, Path 3, which is the final path. This is the Darkness path. This is by far the easiest way to learn, and this is by far the suckiest path once you have learned the fight. Because
totally agree. It's the worst. I would trade 2 top legs for a bottom leg.
But this is part of what I think is brilliant about Rax's design, though, is there is a path that is easy for beginners, but becomes annoying once you are good at it. There is a path that is sucky for beginners that becomes amazing once you were good at it. So I don't know, to me that's a good balance of a way to design mechanics. But anyway, the way the darkness path, although the darkness path is a bit unfair, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit, it should probably be tweaked a little. But anyway, the way the darkness path works is Rax will jump to the ceiling, little and basically block out the light so that there's no light, but little blots of light will show up that you have to stand in. It's kind of like 3 or 4 squares wide. So what you want to do is you want to stand in those squares. They move at random times, like every 5 to 15 seconds, somewhere in between there they can move. When the path first starts, there is darkness, but there is no light, so you have to just stand there and stare and wait for a light to show up. That's, to me, one of the most unfair things about it. There should be a light right away, in my opinion. It's kind of one of the failures of the path, is that you basically have damage at the beginning of this path that there is no way to avoid unless you are using defensives, which can only cover so much. But basically, so you want to keep moving from light puddle to light puddle as you go. The only other mechanics that will be in here is the eggs will still be spawning. So from time to time, you'll have to go to eggs if you want to, or stay in the light. It depends which one's better or worse. It's kind of hard to decide because you take a lot of damage when standing in the darkness, especially at high end rages. So a lot of times it becomes hard, or the eggs spawn like the other side of the room from where the light is. It becomes very hard to figure out which one to manage. I end up skipping a lot of eggs in Path 3 because it's just so hard to get there and not take more damage than 3k, which is all you're saving 3k damage if you get there. That's another thing I think should be fixed. I think the eggs should spawn closer to the light puddles so that you can once again not be forced to take damage.
Although I do think it's nice that there's kind of a choice that you have to make there. I will say one thing is that if you have both mobile and bladed dive, this path becomes a whole different game. You could pretty much always get to the light things basically immediately, and you could almost always get the egg spawns just because you're so mobile, with the mobile perk being able to surge so often and bladed dive adding on to it.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it does have a trade-off. So yeah, it's not the worst part of the path. It just feels a little bit frustrating. But yeah, it's definitely not the worst part. So after. Is it a set amount of time or is it random? But either way, after a little while, Rax will come down from the ceiling and will charge at you, and whichever way he has his legs indicate how you should act here. So basically, you either have to spam up. You either have to spam up, down, left, or right on your keyboard, depending which way he has it. And I believe you have to use the arrow keys. WASD does not work for this.
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
So yeah, you want to be using the arrow keys. if Rax has his legs open in front of him, you want to spam the up arrow key. If Rax has his legs closed in front of him, you'll want to spam down on the arrow keys. If Rax has his legs to the right, you want to spam left. Is that correct? I forget.
Right is right, left is
okay.
left.
So if Rax has his leg, yeah, I know this automatically now, so my brain kind of
I'm
got
the
rid of the information.
way, yeah.
But yeah, so if Rax has his legs right, you want to spam right. If Rax has his leg left, you want to spam left. And if you fail this, you will have to go through this path way more times than what you will want if you get it. If you get it right, you have to basically go through this twice. This does make it also the longest path because of how long it takes for Rax to come down twice. But it takes a little bit of getting used to this, but it's not super hard. It's just about teaching it's just about memorizing basically what the legs mean. And once you have it memorized what the legs mean, it's not very hard at all.
Although when I learned this boss with Bandos and Chaotix, it was actually the fastest path for me.
Oh yeah, when you're learning P3 will 100% be the fastest for you because it's just you don't have to worry. It's not about what DPS you're doing. It's all it's mechanics that are easy to do for anyone. We're easier than getting a perfect DPS rotation, I guess is what I would say. Plus, you don't have to worry about freedom anticipated in this phase. There's a lot fewer mechanics. There's no cleave. There's no crap like that that's going on. But yeah.
It's worth mentioning that Rax still auto attacks. So
yes.
It alternates between magic and ranged auto attacks. It doesn't alternate. It's random.
This is the only.
You could resonance these or use. If you know how to shield a Dren stall so that you could use defensive losslessly, you could use things like Reflect to lower your damage. And I would strongly recommend going for faster kills. Say if you're learning, it's not as big of a deal, but if you're going for faster kill times, a Dren stalling during the entire phase is pretty good. Starting phase 3 with high Adren is pretty nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. So this is the path that you will most likely be learning on. It's definitely the one I would recommend. And then we will move on to phase 3. Phase 3, David already talked about a little bit. Phase 3, the way it works is it has all the mechanics that we've talked about in the previous paths, plus the mechanics from the 2 open paths. It will not have the mechanics from the closed path will not be there, of course, because it's closed. Those mechanics do not exist. But say 2-3 is open, then you're getting explosive spiders and you're getting darkness blots, along with all the other attacks, the special attacks like the cleave and such,
as well as acid spiders, which I think are worth mentioning too. I don't know how much we've talked about this, but essentially there's an enrage mechanic. I'm sure everyone knows that each time you kill the boss, the enrage goes up to a maximum of 300. 300 is the maximum enrage to start the fight. But as the fight progresses, it builds enrage. So the more spiders you kill, the higher the enrage goes. And then the acid spiders, which are only things that spawn on phase 3 if path 2 is open. Essentially, the way these work is that you can choose to lure them underneath Araxxor. This will cause Araxxor to have higher it's absorbing more acid. That's another way to increase Araxxor's enrage is acid absorption. But there's always a trade-off with this boss. I think this is why this is arguably the best, definitely the best designed solo boss. I think in the game. At least I don't know. I think a lot of people would think this. Is that then in phase 4, Araxxi won't absorb that acid. But if you choose to ignore those acid spiders, that makes phase 3 easier because you don't have to, deal with a stronger Araxxor. And also it's obviously going to be a little bit faster because you don't have to, you don't have to waste time luring those acid spiders underneath him. But then you have to deal with Araxxi gaining that acidic enrage, which will make phase 4 more challenging.
It's a bit, and kind of the way it breaks down is that the highly acidic spiders are I would say worth luring when you're just starting out to learn, but pretty quickly it becomes not worth your time because it does make Araxxi a little bit harder, but also in some cases a little bit easier, especially if you're doing, in my opinion, like 1-2. Having the chance, I would rather have Araxxi's enrage increase and DPS increase than get a spider spawn. So having the highly acidic spiders as a potential special attack versus having Araxxi drop a mirror back, I'll take a highly acidic spider any day. well, not I guess in phase 4 it's not a highly acidic spider, but it's the same type of thing. And basically the highly to explain a little bit, the highly acidic spider comes from the acid pool, and then in phase 4 Araxxi just drains directly from the acid pool. So that's how they tie that together and that mechanic together. It all comes from path 2. But yeah.
The last little thing I would say is that there's a trick when using magic or range. It doesn't work very well with melee, but you can try. Is that if you just click lure on all of the different acidic spiders, but don't actually run it underneath Araxxor, and then you stand on the edge where Araxxor goes over during the transition from 3 to 4. During the animation for the transition, Araxxor will actually absorb all of those highly acidic spiders. So that allows you to not waste your time with luring them underneath the boss. You just have to click lure once, and you don't have to deal with the acid at all on phase 4. So if 2-3 is open and you're learning the Swathless range, this is kind of a really neat trick that you in order to avoid that extra damage in phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, your whole goal in this fight is to get, unlike the other phases and path, you want to get Araxxi to 0 health as quickly as possible. Araxxi's health will actually, or Araxxor's health will actually go to 0 here. And when you get 0, if it starts phase 4. So your goal is just DPS, DPS, DPS. And of course, if you're doing P1, you want to watch out for those mirrorback spiders and polishing spiders, and Araxxor the whole time will be healing, not the whole time, but will heal Araxxi from above for any amount of health that you have left from phase 1 and phase 2, which is why it's important in phase 1 and phase 2 to get the health as low as possible, because it makes phase 3 shorter. And I do want to say, as much as we are giving a detailed guide of this, watching a video will also help. Like, especially the path 3 stuff. Like, if you watch a video to understand what Araxxi's legs look like for the different arrow keys you have to press, it'll make a lot more sense. But anyway, then we move on to phase 4. When you are first starting out, I think you have to get 2 kills.
Last thing I will say
ahead.
is that when learning, the reason why people advise you to get its health as low as possible during phase 2 is that phase 3 attacks hit slightly harder because Araxxor will have a higher rage just because Araxxor builds during the fight. And second, auto attacks are a tick faster on phase 3, so specials happen more often. You get attacked more often.
I think specials are random too, right?
We didn't say that, but they're random. Well, they're not actually random, at least with the first special, because there's always a special that it cannot be. But for our purposes, they're random. That's like the easiest way to think about it.
And the random timing, like unlike phase 1 where it's every 4 attacks, you don't have that guarantee in phase 3. So it's worth keeping that in mind. You have all the mechanics of the previous phases, but they can happen whenever. So basically, you want to try to always have freedom or anticipate up in this phase. It is a high goal. And the same thing. If you're doing path 1 or path 2 in phase 2, keep freedom anticipate up as much as you can. Didn't say that, but you're going to be using them. You're going to be using freedom anticipate basically this entire fight, unless you're doing path 3 and you're in phase 2. It's the only time you won't be using it really. But yeah, anything else you want to say about phase 3?
No, I think that pretty much covers most of the.
Okay.
I mean, there are a few DPS things, like I mentioned, with the natural instinct into Zerk. If you're doing path 2, path 1, essentially you want to always keep it in that little corner, in the aisle. You never want to bring him if you're going for really fast kills. The reason you keep him in the aisle and you don't ever want to bring him out to the open is that limits where the new spiders can spawn. So like they could spawn all over the place if you bring them to the kind of larger open area. But if you leave them in the narrow path, that's more limited and easier for you to kill them with a hurricane or something like that. And then with phase 3, with path 3, basically you're, depending on how fast you kill it, you'll either do a Zerk. That's more common if you're newer, or you'll do thresholds. And whenever I say Zerk, that also means death swiftness or whatever style. So it's just like melee is by far the most common way to kill the boss. So that's why I use that as the example.
And I guess we should also say melee with a scythe. I mean, you can use Dragors or whatever else, but the scythe gives you the distance that makes it way easier. Plus, Araxxi's big enough that the Scythe, I think, hits multiple times because of how big the target is, if I remember correctly. But yeah, anyways, on to Phase 4. Phase 4, the first 2 kills here are a little bit frustrating because there's a super long cutscene, which makes it so that you cannot adrenaline stall. But once you get your first 2 kills, that cutscene will never play again. So get those as quickly as you can, kind of, to get rid of that mechanic. But anyways, what happens is Araxxi walks down to Phase 4 to fight you. You jump down there too, and then Araxxor gets pissed off. Or no, Araxxor. Now I'm getting Araxxor is the male version, right? I got it mixed up.
Yeah, Araxxor is male. Araxxi is.
Araxxor walks down to Phase 4 to fight you, and then Araxxi gets pissed off and squishes him because he's failing her, and decides to fight you herself. This is where the fight gets the hardest. This is where you're going to die a lot. This is where you're going to feel like you get cheated by death, because this phase is designed to be hard and to kill you as you kill the boss, or to even kill you a couple seconds after you kill the boss. This is a very hard phase. So the way this phase works is all the previous mechanics are there. Highly acidic spiders, as we said, are just an acid pool that Araxxi will absorb. The mirrorback spiders and stuff like that can spawn. The darkness can spawn as well. All the mechanics, cleaving, everything. Until you get her under 50k. So basically your goal here is to have 100% adrenaline when you go into phase 4, and then you want to I don't know, I always alt at the beginning of this phase if I can. I don't know how you do it, David.
Yeah, well, back in the days of Planted Feed, if you zerked at the start of the phase, you could still have some of your zerk left over when Araxxi was dead. It was pretty hilarious era for RS when Planted Feet worked with melee. But now it's a little bit more of a choice. I also zerk at the start. I think getting 50k ASAP is pretty good. The alternative way to do it is to start with an auto attack, then use blood tendrils, and then cleave, severs, and then or cleave dismembers Zerk, I think. But honestly, I think that Zerk first auto attack is pretty great. I will say one thing here, and it's annoying to some people. This is a place where extremely meticulous DPS rotations really shines, because if your DPS rotation is perfect, you'll kill it so quickly that all of these mechanics that we've been talking about will functionally be irrelevant until much higher in rages, when things like prayer switching becomes, a question of life or death. But this is a place where practicing on a dummy or watching guides or something like that, and having a sequence of abilities that you do in a specific order, in a specific way, every single time without fail, things like sneaking in auto attacks when you zerk, etc., can really make this a breeze. But I know that's kind of hard to deal with when it's not going to be fun.
Yeah. So the way it works, as David just mentioned, is you will have to be prayer switching this whole time. Is it always range in melee? I don't think, or always range in magic. It's never melee switch.
It's always range in magic if you are outside of melee distance. It's always magic melee if you're in distance.
Okay. Sure. Gotcha. Okay. So you will want to have your prayers keybound for prayer switching here. You are switching not quite every attack, but it can be almost every attack. Kind of, it seems like it can be a little bit strange, but you have to prayer switch all the time. You have to be DPSing, and you also have to be watching out for special mechanics. This is why you want to get Rax below 50k health as quickly as possible, because as soon as she's below 50k health, she will no longer be casting any special attacks on you. So that's basically what your goal here is: get her below 50k, keep your prayer switching going on. A Razor Naga will really help you with prayer switching, or any mouse that has buttons on it can really help with that. So if you can afford one, I recommend it. Then the other part of the fight happens when you get Rax under 25k. She drains 50% of your adrenaline, so you want to try to use up as much adrenaline as possible that you have before that happens. And also another thing that happens is she sends out I forget what it's called. Do you remember what it's called, David?
Acid core.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I call it acid core, or dark core. It's not dark core, that's the core one, but it's called an acid core.
Yeah, so it's just a little black thing that pops around the room. After hopping 3 or 4 times, it lands on you and starts doing incredible damage. The way to avoid this is to just move. You have to wait till it lands on you, though, or if you are not using Revolution, and if you're manually, you can just keep walking around the room the whole time, and then you'll never have to worry about this. But if you're using Revolution and you're standing still for part of the fight, what you want to do is wait till the core is landing on you, and then move, and then you will avoid the damage there. Like I said, the other way to do it is to just be moving the entire last 25k of the fight, and then you never have to worry about the core landing on you. Of course, you have to manage this while you're also prayer switching and things like that. And this is the kind of stuff that can make it. And also, throughout this fight, Rax can also spawn. It seems like she can spawn mage, range, or melee spiders. I don't know exactly what causes that. It's not just path 1 that she can do that on. Is that just like am I wrong there, or do you know?
I don't know. I've only ever seen that on path. I've never seen it. I'm not really sure what.
I must just be wrong then. Okay.
Yeah.
But okay, so yeah, if one thing I was going to say though, if there are, go ahead.
One glitch that does happen is that the core can hit you instantly. It's a really small chance, but it can happen. Instead of bouncing around, it's supposed to be 5 times, but it seems to be a little bit more random than that. And sometimes the core can instantly hit you straight out of the way. So that's something careful about, especially learning. It's rare, but it can.
And a big tip I would give in phase 4 too is keep your health high. Do not. A big mistake you can make, especially when learning, is like trying to worry about adrenaline over health. In phase 4, Rax, especially when learning it, keep your health high. Your health is more important than your adrenaline, because it is very easy to like miss a prayer switch, get hit by a 4K, then the core lands on you and you're dead, and then you're pissed because you were almost done with the kill. So I recommend to keep your health high here until you know what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing, then do it at your own risk, type thing. But yeah, under 25k, get her to 0. She's dead. Something to watch out here for too, as well, is this is a place where you can run out of food, and then I've had this happen before, and it really, really sucks. I've killed Rax. The fight's been over for 5 seconds, but the phase 1 or the path 1 spiders are still standing around shooting me, and they've killed me 5 seconds after the boss is dead. So that's something you have to watch out for as well, as there's a lot of mechanics here that are basically designed to kill you around the same time that Rax dies. So just be ready for that to be a part of your fight. That's going to be a part of the learning process. Even after you have the fight learned, you're still going to have times where you just die at the same time as the boss. That's just how the cookie crumbles, as they say.
A basic DPS thing, and this is why having a meticulous rotation helps a lot, is around between 27 and 32k health. Since you're going to lose your adrenaline anyways, you want to, as much as you possibly can, use a channeled threshold around that time, because even though your adrenaline gets drained, the threshold will continue. So something like assault or destroy can actually, especially if you're still in Zerk, if you say assault or destroy at around 28k, 30k health, that assault or destroy can actually kill Araxxi just from the channeled ability, or you'll be like 1 cleave away or something like that. With ranged, rapid fire is an option, or at very least something like snapshot. And then with magic, asphyxiate is kind of your channeled threshold, although the kind of more fun magic method, in my opinion, is to have a decent amount of adrenaline, still be in your sunshine, detonate, and then you're able to auto detonate asphyx at around 30k, and Araxxi just like instantly. So that's one tip that is to make sure that around 30k HP you're using a channel.
Yep, absolutely. And I think since we forgot to cover this at the top of the fight, you're going to want 90 plus in all your stats for this fight. For learning it, you're gonna want overloads. I don't think you can really use Blood Essence here, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, you could use it for speed kill attempts, especially at lower in ranges. It's probably fine. I think it's less consistent than Overload, especially for higher in ranges. The reason you don't want to do it, obviously, is because since the ranged attack drains your stats and you don't have that Overload to refresh you, on phase 4, that can really mess you up, even in melee. So I don't know. I think Overload is a whole lot easier to manage this fight.
Sure. And you'll want T70 plus armor. I didn't learn the fight. I think I learned the fight in T90, but then there was a while where I was using T70 because it was way cheaper. So T70 is fine. It will be longer fights, but you can totally do it. Augmented with all the best perks, of course, will also greatly increase your kill speeds. So if you can afford that stuff, do it. You also T85 God Wars 2 T85 plus weapons are really what you need. I still use Shadow Glaives all the time when I range because I don't own any other ranged weapons because Shadow Glaives are cheap, and I make all my own T90 weapons, and I've been selling all my legs, so I haven't actually made a T90 ranged weapon yet. Anyways, and when you're meleeing, the Scythe is going to be the best way to go. The Scythe is honestly super fun to use here, and I think great DPS. Another thing I can add is this is kind of like Telos, where if you have a Luck of the Dwarves, you can equip it after the kill, but before looting the corpse to get a chance at HSR. So this is a good place to bring Luck of the Dwarves if you want to.
It also increases your chance at a leg. But
yeah.
It brings it. I think that people have collected data. They think it brings it from 1 in 40 to about 1 in 30 or something like that, which is over enough kills, pretty significant.
Yeah, it's a decent upgrade. I still have decided it's not worth my money, but I should buy one at some point. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much sums up the fight. I can't think of anything we missed. Sorry if that was a... Oh, I hope that was laid out well for everybody. Make sure to watch the video like I said beforehand. And sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I would just say if you are meleeing, I personally bring Drygores for Phase 4. I find being able to have both a destroy in my Zerk rotation makes a tremendous difference for me, and I'm proficient enough at prayer flicking where the difference between having to flick between melee and mage versus mage and range doesn't really matter much. It's much more difficult because the melee attacks happen so quickly, but once you are very adept at the fight and are really comfortable with it, definitely bringing a Drygore switch for it. You don't even have to use it for Decimate. Just having it for Destroy, just for Phase 4, can really help. The downside, when you're learning, don't do this. It adds a ton, so wouldn't recommend it. Plus, it's definitely harder to do. But that's just something worth mentioning, I guess.
And I think this is also, well, I guess next would be here too, but like this is the boss that it's totally worth using practice mode to learn. It's worth mentioning that. Like, don't like. I spent my first. I got my first kill in practice mode. I spent some time in practice mode getting the fight down. Also, you can lower. We haven't talked about this before, but the ring of is it the ring of life or whatever? Whatever ring saves your life when you're about to die.
Yeah, ring of life.
It's almost never worth it to use because you can generally just wear cheaper armor and get your degrade get your death cost below what the Ring of Life is to wear. So if you want to, I think the Ring of Life is like 500k per death. And it's pretty easy to get your death cost under 500k. So one of the best things to do is just to do
you
that.
mean the Ring of Death?
Oh yeah, the Ring of Death.
Ring of Death.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, never use the Ring of Death ever. It's almost always cheaper to just bring 5 items, bring a portent of item protection and pray.
Yep.
Use that prayer. There's also, I forget the perk combination, but I know someone who has specific Araxxor perks. So they found a way to combine one of the main perks, like Crackling 3 or something like that, with whatever that perk is that protects one extra item. So that's an option too.
Yeah.
But honestly, important of item protection. The difference between life and death is not one item in space. One thing I will say when learning, it could be really helpful to bring a Phoenix necklace for Phase 4, around 50k or so HP, just to be on the safe side. If you put that Phoenix necklace on, in case you deal with the core improperly, that Phoenix necklace can save your life, because when you drop below 2k HP, it'll proc and bring you back up to like 6k HP or something like that. So that can save a ton of kills, especially if you find yourself like dying as Araxxi dies or dying with like 10k left. A Phoenix necklace can be the difference between getting a kill and not getting a kill. So that's something to consider also.
That's a very good tip. I think something else we haven't talked about is when soul splitting at this fight, Araxxi will also soul split. So that's why you're not using it here, but you can avoid that by soul split flicking on thresholds. So that is a good way to do. I think it's mainly used in 2-3. Is if you want to bring your Amulet of Souls and do a lot of soul split flicking, that can make it so you basically have to eat nothing. Of course, along with using all your defensives and stuff like that. So that is a advanced tactic that can be used. Just make sure you're not trying to do the fight with soul split turned on the whole time, because it will be impossible.
Yeah, definitely. Soul split flicking is huge for thresholds, especially. Actually, I would say even more so on path 1, because when you're about to kill a bunch of minions with a hurricane or a cleave, you could turn on soul split, and not only will it do the damage for Araxxi, but all the minions, you'll soul split all that back as well.
Good point. Didn't even think about that. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add to the fight?
No, I think that pretty much covers everything. I think that Araxxi is kind of the pinnacle of solo PVM. I think Telos is a separate category altogether. It's just a different mentality, totally different style, and different set of requirements to make money at that boss. But Araxxi has, been consistently one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best options for money making for like 3 years now. And as long as the Scythe is the pinnacle of long range melee weapons, I think it'll continue. That's what's holding up the leg prices, by the way. I think that if I don't know, I mean maybe legs would stay high even if the tier 92 Scythe came out, but I think it wouldn't be quite the same. And even the common drops are pretty good. You get a ton of brews, a ton of rock tails, a ton of super restores. Almost all your supplies are you get back. You even get overloads back, and yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a really good boss. It's even better to do once you learn it really well. Learn how to do it duo. Are we saving duo for the kind of team boss section of this? I'm guessing that's what we're
yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool.
I forget what I was going to say. Crap. Oh, I was going just a couple tips, Revolution based tips. It has gotten better recently, but there can be some issues where when you're trying to dodge or cleave or something like that, there can be some delay in actually getting movement to respond. I'm just going to talk real quickly here about how I deal with cleaves in melee. Basically, I always have it set up so that I can turn directly around 180 degrees and run behind me, and I have my mouse about 5 or 6 squares behind me. So if I see Rax start to cleave, I just spam click that square and I turn directly around and run away. That is the best way that I've found to deal with it, especially in Revolution. It seems I almost never run into the issue anymore where I get stuck because I'm in the middle of casting an attack. It can still happen like 1% of the time, but it rarely happens if you use that strategy. So that is a tip worth saying for those people out there who want to stick with Revolution. I swear there was something else I wanted to say, but I guess it will always be lost. But yeah, the next thing we're going to talk about here is Telos. This is a fight that I have attempted, but have not actually gotten a kill in yet. I haven't really tried that much. This is a boss that, I don't know, it kind of interests me, but I also kind of hate the mechanics, so it's part of why I have not done it. I will hand this over to David to kind of lead, since he knows the fight way better than I do.
Yeah, so Telos is kind of the top level of solo PVM. At the higher enrages, it's by far the most difficult solo fight. Nothing else really is close, and I would be shocked if they release something at this level in any time in the near future. Congrats to Sadin for achieving 4K in Rage. It's a pretty incredible achievement, even with the Pantheon aura. Still really a lot of dedication and hard work there, so that's pretty amazing. But basically, Telos will make you virtually no money and you learn it, and until you get a high enough enrage. But once you've mastered the fight, it can get you something like, I would. Some people estimate it's around 100 mil an hour. I think that's pretty high and relying too much on SOS luck. But I think it's at least around 80 mil an hour at the highest level, which pretty much outclasses any other solo fight that we've talked about. I mean, Araxxi is great, but it's nowhere. it's nowhere close to 70, 80, 90 mil range. Really, it's just not. I don't know. I know Hannah, you've made a lot there, but it's not really in that
Oh no,
tier.
I made a lot, but I've also put in a lot of time. I mean, I'm not making. Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't done an average, but I would guess I've maybe made 10 to 15 mil an hour at most.
I think that's about right. 10 to 15 is right. So Telos just kind of blows the top off of all of these, and that's obviously because Stathos Lisquet is still. It actually dropped below max cash for a short amount of time when it was dumped, but now it's once again well over max cash.
I mean, we should
2.3, 2.4 bill.
It blows the top off of money making. It also blows the top off of difficulty. Like this is we are talking about Araxxi and then Telos, but like David said, Telos is a completely different category at the level of making 80 to 90 mil an hour. Like it's ridiculously hard. This is the end all be all of PVM.
Yeah, so I would recommend being basically maxed in whatever style you're using. 99, not 90 plus, but that's just needed for accuracy and damage. You need tier 90s. I actually streaked pretty far with tier 80s and unaugmented subjugation, an abyssal wand, and a dragon kite shield. A friend wanted me to get him a title on for the boss, and that was his gear, and so I used it. Brutal. The kills were like 14 minutes long towards the high iron rages, but I mean, so it is possible. It's just not really worth learning unless you've got I would not recommend any style other than magic. Once you're more experienced, doing lower in rage kills with melee can be extremely fast and well worthwhile. But really, magic shines here for a ton of reasons. The most simple of which is that at a higher in rage, you're going to be using tank gear. And because Telos primarily attacks you with melee and the minions primarily attack you with melee, it just straight up absorbs a lot of the damage. It's great. It's against magic. But the other reason is just that there are all kinds of different combinations of abilities. The fact that magic has the ability detonate, and also just the kind of how good wands are versus crossbows that really just make it unparalleled. So I would definitely suggest using. So Telos has 5 phases. There are 4 phases from 0 to 100 in rage, or 0 to 99 in rage, and then at 100 in rage, it adds a 5th phase. The first 4 phases have a variety of different mechanics. And Hannah, did you want me to go into every single phase here, or how exactly did you describe the stuff?
I guess whatever you feel will be best. I mean, if you think the phase descriptions will work well in an audio only form, then go for it. But if you think it's best left for a video, then I guess keep it higher.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So I'll do kind of some brief stuff for each phase. So phase one is green beams. There are 3 types of green beams: red beams, black beams. Green beams drain your prayer, but give you essentially infinite adrenaline. You could do a tremendous amount of damage. They're very, very good. You want to stand in them always. Red beams increase the amount of damage that you take, but increase the amount of damage that you deal. Black beams lower the amount of damage you take, but also lower the amount of damage you deal. And the first 3 phases, the first one has a green beam that spawns. The second one has a black beam that spawns. The third one has a red beam that spawns. I'm not going to go into the details of every single mechanic because as Hannah was saying, I don't think it translates super well to an audio format. There's really excellent YouTube guides out there. Hannah, are we allowed to mention specific people or
yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay, so I think that the easiest to understand, best comprehensive guide is the one done. There are 2 of them. The first one is done by Base Tank, Base Space Tank. He has an updated guide with the most recent strategies for every single phase, and he breaks it down by ability. So he has a version that's sort of like, here's what the mechanics are. Then he'll have a version that's like, here's the rotation: auto attack, dragon breath, impact, deep impact, like literally every single ability to use. So if that's helpful for you with a lot of audio, there's that. And then the second one is, I think Evo Lucario does a pretty good job. But he does not actually talk during any of the stuff. So if you like having the audio to go along with the video, I think Andy, Andy is Base Tank, is probably the best guide to watch for this. And yeah, so you work your way through the first 3 phases. They're all relatively simple. Phase 3 is where most learners die because there's in kind of an enraged meter type mechanic where if your bar goes too far to the right, he'll start these bombs which do tremendous amount of typeless damage very, very quickly. And so that's kind of where most people die. The other thing is that I would not recommend trying this boss without Corruption Blast and without Onslaught. If you don't have those 2 abilities, I don't honestly think it's worth learning. And the reason I say that is that unless you're able to do it at a high enrage and go on long streaks, it's highly unlikely you'll make it. And so if you're ill-equipped to be able to do those higher enrage kills, it's really better to just another boss, get your gear up, get your requirements up, and then switch back to Telos.
Yeah, and I think kind of caveats to that worth saying. I think first of all, I did say the high end of this boss is some of the hardest stuff in the game. The low end of this boss is arguably easier than Araxxi. So
I think much easier, actually. I think much easier.
Okay, yeah.
Than Araxxi, yeah.
So like if you just wanted to get a kill on this boss, see what this is actually a boss that's like super easy. Like before you watch any videos, just hop in and try to do the fight, see what it's like. Go in blind, see what it's like, and then go watch some videos. You'll kind of know the fight a little bit better. Then you can go back in, stuff like that, if that's how you want to play. And also, of course, I mean, people who think this way know this, but if making money isn't your goal, you can kill Telos whenever the hell you want. So, David's saying, not recommending this because we are definitely talking this show, and the way we talk comes from a efficiency / money making perspective. But if you just enjoy killing stuff, you could, you can do that whenever the heck you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. So 0 to 100 in rage is very, very, very easy. Phase 5 is a little more tricky. So phase 5, it seems like the fight starts all over. There are various fonts, mechanics, all 3 beams will appear. And the one thing I will say about Telos, and this is why watching a guide is if you want to get better at it, is that Telos is more particular in the abilities that you do and the rotations that you do, because there's a unique special attack every 3 auto attacks, and those special attacks are, it's not like Araxxi where it's like, hey, you forget a cocoon, you have to click 8 times, it adds a little to the kill length, maybe you have to sit before you bruise. Even the cleave isn't that bad until higher in rage. Something like the web mechanic, if you hit the web, unless you cleave or hurricane in a zerk, it's really not a big deal. You can kind of make mistakes and it's fine. Telos at a higher in rage, say around 300 plus in rage, is where this kind of starts happening. If you make a mistake, it's a very fast death. It's pretty much, there's nothing you can do. You cannot make mistakes. These special attacks are devastating. They'll just crush you. If you get tendrilled at high in rage and you don't have high adrenaline, or you aren't deadoed, or you aren't in the sunshine, or you don't have reflect up, you're dead. If you get cleaved, there's a cleave for Telos as well, and you don't surge or escape away from it. It's not like Araxxi where you anticipate and you'll be fine. It's literally you have to surge at the exact correct tick, or you are dead at a higher in rage. If you mess up on phase 3 and start getting bombed, you're dead. And so it's just it's very unforgiving. But the advantage to that is people who are very good at specific mechanics and specific rotations and perfecting the same set of tasks over and over and over will find that Telos is arguably the most predictable boss of any RuneScape 3 creation, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's it's very, very, if this happens, this is what you do. It's very plug in. It's like math or something like that. It's you get an equation, you know what the formula is, you plug it in, and there's your answer. And it's very formulaic, which is both a good and a bad thing on what you enjoy. Yeah, and so phase 5 is a whole different game. It kind of is what separates Telos from all the other bosses, because it requires you to do a significant amount of DPS while paying attention to mechanics. And the penalty for not doing that DPS, instead of being slow kill times, which is what Araxxi is, for example, you just get a slower kill time. At Telos, you die, and there's nothing to do. So they're kind of The kind of second major thing that happens is that at 1,000 in rage, you're no longer able to use immortality. If you use immortality and they're insta kills. Sorry, I should have said this. So on phase 4 and phase 5, there are insta kill mechanics. The phase 5 insta kill mechanic is only avoidable through what's called fonting minions. It's where you kill all the minions next to the font. This obviously severely lessens the amount of DPS you're doing on the boss, and so most people will kill the minions ASAP and then focus all their DPS on Telos. Usually you're able to pre-font, which is you kill the boss before you ever get the insta-kill. But if you happen to have some HP left, you could just immortality. If you're getting to this point and the boss still has a huge amount of damage, you're just not doing enough DPS. And you either need to practice more or watch a guide because you're doing something wrong, if that makes sense. Or you're under-geared or something terrible has happened. I will say, this might surprise some people, Maniacal is much, much better for learning Telos than Runic. The reason for this is that the loss of defense from Maniacal isn't a big deal, especially at lower enrages, but the added DPS helps tremendously. And for those who don't know, Zerk auras were recently updated where you maintain your stats at 127 even after you drink brews. So your new refresh stats will be to 127, and that's just a huge improvement in both accuracy and damage over any other aura. So it has the 10% accuracy of Runic plus the added benefit of keeping you at 127 stats. So it's like being on super overload.
It's a pretty big upgrade.
Yeah, it's huge. It basically means that Maniacal blew Runic out of the water in terms of damage. But where before it used to be, Maniacal was always better, but it was always like a little bit of a contest. Now it's really yeah. So the other thing is Zerk Essence can be a tremendous help. This is also a little bit counterintuitive, but because there's certain parts of the boss that are so DPS intensive, even when you're learning, being familiar with Zerk Essence and knowing how to use it can really help a lot. And yeah, so I feel like I'm kind of rambling here. I'll switch to how to make money at this boss. There are two different ways to do it. One is to streak, and the other is to camp 999s. So the streak method is you, of course, build up drops as you continue killing the boss without actually looting until you get a rare item or you die. If you die, you lose a huge percentage of what you got. If you had something like an Onyx, it's entirely a percentage of an Onyx. It does something like that. And most people say start from 100. It's a little more fun, in my opinion, to start from 0. Plus, the meleeing 0 to 100 is just a real fun time. You get like 3-minute kills. It's hilarious. And you get these really nice long streaks. It seems to be determined that the way the mechanic works is that for the commons get better the higher your streak is, and the rares increase their drop chance based only on the enrage. So doing a kill at 999 in rage on a 0 to 999 streak has the same chance of getting, say, an orb, but doing a 999 kill on a 0 to 999 streak versus a 999 kill is a huge difference in the common drops, which is why you'll see something like someone can do a 900 enrage kill streaking from 100 and get 15 onyxes as a drop. Like, that's literally a drop. I think I've gotten a drop that was 8 onyx. So like one kill took me 6 minutes. I got 8 onyx. Like this is the kind of money making potential that we're talking about. This is why it's 80 to 90 mil an hour. But if you do a 999 kill without any streaking, you might get like 50 Lantidon. The benefit of camping 999s, and obviously this is difficult because getting to 999% enrage is very, very tough. Very few people can do it. Very few people can successfully camp kills. But it has about a 1 in 8 of getting a rare drop. Most people have switched to the 999 method. I think it's a lot less fun.
Have you kept up with that currently? Because there's been a lot of controversy in the community as to whether or not that information is correct over the past month or two.
I mean, from the people I've talked to who camp 999s, their rates are anywhere between 1 in 18 and 1 in 20 rare drops. So I think it's pretty right. I could have changed, or they could have changed the drop rate, but I don't see a reason.
I mean, I haven't heard anything change. I don't know. I would just say with a caveat, I don't know. There's controversy over how accurate those numbers are. Is all I would say. I mean, I don't know. I of course can't. I'm not one who camps 999, so I can't really speak to either way of this. I just know that there's people who don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely fair. Obviously, it's much less consistent probably to camp 999s. Arguably, streaking allows you to just like build things up over time, and those common drops add a ton to the value of the orb sets that you end up making. But the downside to them is like losing a streak to disconnect after a 60 kill streak is devastating. Losing a 999 kill to disconnect is like, okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean.
So it's like that's kind of the upside to 999 kills is even if it's not quite as good and not quite as good as I'm saying, I think it probably is, by the way. I think that like 1 in 24 is about right. But even if it's not, the fact that you don't have to worry about disconnecting is why this method has become so popular.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, this is why I would say like this is part of why I don't like Telos as a boss, is that Telos was designed for streaking to be a thing, which I think is a terrible design mechanic in a game that has notorious server issues like Jagex does, like RuneScape does. But plus, I also think that streaking for most players isn't fun. But there's a niche part of the community that has come to enjoy that part of Telos. But I don't know. To me personally, I think they went a little bit too far with this. But then again, I don't know. I guess they're addressing a niche, just like the wilderness updates. It's a niche part of the community that they are addressing. So I guess that's okay to do.
Yeah, I don't think Telos was ever intending that like everyone should come and do it. Just wasn't the purpose of the, like you said, it was like a PV. They're a segment of the community that likes. I will say more people do Telos than do that than are in the PvP world. So it's at least something. It's at least some part of the community. I think it's larger than PvPers.
Yeah, but to people successfully doing Telos, I mean, I don't know. Like I wouldn't be surprised at. It's kind of hard to read. It's kind of hard to read the size of either of those communities. But yeah.
Well, I mean that's part of why staffs of Swiske are still at about.
Yeah.
If everyone was able to do it, then it would have crashed in value, so the way Noxious weapons crashed in value within a couple months after Araxxor's release.
Yeah.
So the reason 999 is selected is that at 1,000 in rage, immortality no longer works, which makes kills much more difficult, less consistent, and people use a slightly different method, and also just makes them take a lot longer depending on your DPS. The way that one of the easiest ways to build Enrage as fast as possible, and if you're first learning Telos and you've met all these requirements, you're very competent with PVM, you've done hundreds of Rax kills, probably done a lot of Virago bomb tanking. I think Virago bomb tank is one of the best ways to get yourself a little bit used to Telos in terms of rotating defensives correctly and using a shield a lot and weapon switching constantly, stuff like that, or tanking Yaka or something like that. Those are some things you could do to practice. Basically, is to use Pantheon in order to just sign to the insta-kills. And that's kind of how a 4,000 Rage was done. Without this method, I don't think maybe even been possible, because the minions have so much health that they would have been functionally impossible to font in time. And so instead of dealing with the insta-kill mechanic, Sadin and Lit and others around 2k in rage, they all got to about 2k in rage before they started doing this, is just signing via the Pantheon aura to every single insta-kill in order to do constant DPS and ignore the fonting minions mechanic.
It will be funny when the Pantheon aura goes away in 4 months and no one can kill kill Telos past 2k in rage.
Yeah, and I mean, really, there's no real purpose other than just the achievement of doing it. I think that something that a few of the top PVMers like Couchy and Sadin have been doing is to start streaks from 1k instead of starting streaks from 0. And that's kind of interesting to me, kind of combining the streaking method with 999s in a way, of sort of taking the risk, but taking it at a much higher level. I personally haven't done that. I haven't spent time at Telos. My part of my issue with Telos is I just like Virago shit, despite having a Vitalis and having done everything. I don't know. I really like it, and so that's what I spend most of my time doing on RS when I am PVMing is hard mode.
Yeah,
Virago.
I mean, it's fair. There's something to do. I just think there's no way to fix this now, but I think it's obviously was a mistake for Jagex to allow the Pantheon Aura to work at Telos.
Well, I will say this, is that many PVMers, including myself, bought Premier Club mostly because we knew we'd be able to use Pantheon at Telos in order. So I think it's just straight up a financial thing. It's that I don't know what the percentage is, but I know that a lot of the people on my friends list bought Premier Club, either with bonds, which still, obviously make the company money, or with their own money, precisely because of Telos.
Yeah, but I bet most of you would have bought it anyway because it was cheaper for most people. I don't know. I don't think it would have actually, unless you're grandfathered in, I don't think it actually would have affected that many people who bought it because it was literally saved money this year.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot it saved this year. In the past, it hasn't. So,
correct.
So
that
makes sense to me. Yeah, that's definitely possible for sure.
I mean, the other sad byproduct of this is like if there was a good PVMer who had quit the game and came back like after the Premier Club package ended, and they wanted to try to rush Telos in Rage and try to get that achievement, it would literally be impossible for them, which is the other super downside to this.
I won't say it is impossible because I've never done Telos at those in Rages, so I don't know for sure. I mean, but my instinct is that it's probably.
I think we can safely say that currently 4K is impossible without Pantheon. Like I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I think so. I think the minions just have too much health for you to be able to even kill. The last thing I'll say is that Telos is another place where 4 ticking shines. It's just, or at the very least, learning how to cleverly sneak in auto attacks, using an auto attack with your detonate, using an auto attack with your sunshine. It makes just a huge difference, especially if you're using a staff of Sliske or Noxious Staff, because those auto attacks deal quite a bit of damage. But really, it's another place where 4 ticking is just such a game changer. It's not a requirement. You don't even need it to push past 1K in Rage, and your staff is fine. But at the very least, knowing how to use auto attacks and pretty much perfect DPS rotations are a must if you want to approach this boss from an I want to make money perspective. If you just want to have fun and just do some Telos kills for a Reaper or something like that, that's one thing. But if you want to actually make money consistently, you definitely need to have pretty much max gear, including full acto for higher in Rages. You kind of need full acto, except a death. One thing I should mention is Death Touch Bracelet really shines at Telos. The reason for this is that Telos isn't immune to anything, so stunning works, which means things like Rack do a ton of damage, Dread Nips work, Weapon Poison works, and Reflect damage works. So when literally you're using Deflect Melee, it actually recoils damage, and Death Touch Bracelet, which recoils damage, is best in slot for your glove slot by far. Nothing is even close to as good as it because it reflects so much damage back at Telos, and the higher in Rage you go, the more damage it reflects. So it's really an invaluable item if you want to do Telos seriously. Same thing with Angel of Death. Using a Death Touch Bracelet is pretty much by far the best choice because Nex is not immune.
Awesome. Anything else to say about that fight?
No, I think that's more or less enough. I think there are a lot of really good YouTube guides. I will say that Telos kind of changed the whole meta for PVM and discussion of PVM. It caused people to come up with rotations that included things like Tsunami and what's the one with all the different elements? The level 2 spell, Omnipower. Yeah, okay. Omnipower. Things like Tsunami and Omnipower are very relevant at Telos. For a while, people were experimenting with bringing an AGS for Phase 5, sitting in the green beam with basically infinite adren and just AGS specking over and over and over and over again inside of a Zerk. So you would Zerk and just do AGS specs over and over and over. I mean, obviously that method is not as good as the more recent melee methods, but Telos is the first boss where it's just like, because of that mechanic where adrenaline wasn't a limiting factor, it allowed you to use the full, every single ability is relevant. Every magic ability, every ranged ability, every melee ability, every defensive ability, depending on which style you're using. Every ability has some place and some relevance at Telos, which I think Telos is the first boss to ever incorporate that variety within a rotation. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think this discussion has kind of warned me a little bit to the idea of Telos existing. I still don't think it's a fight that I'm going to ever really do at a high level, because it's just not. I don't know. I'm not the kind of person who wants to put that kind of time into the game. I mean, at this point, I've gotten to kind of a place where I can, like, I don't want to say AFK, but almost AFK racks. I'm so comfortable with it that I don't have to pay attention.
Yeah, I mean,
100%
I know
of the time.
It feels AFK. It's like I could eat like a do a rack.
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess the final thing I would add is, I think like I said, the points you brought up actually warmed me towards the fact that Telos exists as a boss. But I would say, Jagex, also please give us an actual successor to Araxxi someday. Maybe that's where the T92 Scythe should come from, is an actual successor to that boss that is aimed at the high level, but not the high level that Telos is, and also is not easy like the Magister. Something that actually, I don't know. Araxxi is a boss design that I would like to see re-explored. Multiple paths. I think it's just a very ingenious design, and then I am definitely biased because it's also my favorite boss in the game, so I will add that. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this podcast. Didn't have one for a little while, but here we got a nice 2-hour-long episode for you all, packed full of your bossing content needs. Hopefully everything made some sense. I know there was a little bit of rambling. Thank you all very much for listening. Make sure, if you would like to submit feedback about the show, or if you have any questions, we might try to do a Q&A episode sometime if we get enough questions. So you can send those in to pvmperspective@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at PVM Perspective on Twitter. You can also follow that account for updates for when the show either goes out or is being recorded. Sometimes we do the show live. We didn't this time, but once we get back on a regular schedule, I think we will. You can also find the Discord for RuneScape Weekly at discord.runeweek.com. Also, you can find me in-game at Hana Quinn. And David, where can everybody find you in-game?
Name is still Kabru. Has been for kind of a while, although I haven't logged in. My computer is still not. I think when I get it back, I'll probably log in against Virago.
Yeah, I hope that gets fixed quickly and that you can come back. I think that's going to do it for us, unless you have anything to add, David.
No, I just want to mention, we haven't mentioned them on the show yet. It's just the new sigils. There's one particular for PVM, the Limitless sigil. It was pretty much unusable outside of people with infinite cash, like me when I bought mine. Because of how expensive it was like 600k per use. But now it's coming down a little bit in price because of the Vital Spark change. It's really, really good, especially if you do high-level team bosses, and we'll be talking about that in next episode, I think.
Yeah, I think team bosses will either be next episode or coming up soon. Depends. We haven't laid the show out yet, but there should be another show in about 2 weeks after this comes out. We used to release on Thursdays. I think that's a little bit more fluid now, but we still want to get a show out every 2 weeks when we can. So expect a new episode in about 2 weeks. Thank you all very much for listening, and have a great week.